Hey guys, tonight we will slow walk along a moonlit beach where the Pacific breathes like a sleeping giant, and the breadfruit leaves above the sand rustle as if someone were turning pages in a very old book. You can taste salt in the air and see a sky so crowded with stars that your gaze doesn't know where to land. If you're already in bed, congratulations. Your pillow is about to become a front row seat to the quietest adventure. This is where the map is the sky, and your eyelids are invited to rest whenever they like because the story will keep rowing for you. We're going voyaging with Polynesian wayfinders, so gentle and unhurried that you probably won't survive this fully awake. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the silvered edge of the tide, feeling water curl across your toes like silk drawn by a careful hand. The breadfruit grove behind you murmurs, leaves clapping softly, fruit heavy as lanterns in the branches. You breathe in slowly because nothing here is hurried. The air tastes of salt, wood smoke, and green sap. A boy passes with a coil of sennet rope smelling of coconut husk and nods in a way that says you belong as long as you don't try to prove it. The canoe house is a dark triangle against the star-crowded sky. Inside, rafters hold the day's heat and the memory of voices mapping reefs and currents. The elder arrives without announcement, moving as though his feet remember dances your feet never learned. He doesn't give a name. The ocean is the only introduction you need. His hands, broad, lined, resin-scented, rest on your shoulder like a gull settling on a wave. He points toward the reef where a pale seam of foam stitches lagoon to ocean. "Listen," he says. At first you hear only the ordinary night, waves and shrill applause, wind combing trees, a gecko scolding under the eaves. Then you hear the longer note beneath it, a bass line steady enough to set your breath. Swell from a wind you cannot feel, fetch measured in islands you cannot yet name. In damp sand he draws the arc of a voyage, the notch of a constellation, the pale road of a current. "Do not steer only with your eyes," he says. "Your eyes will fall asleep. Steer with your ribs, with the place behind your knees, with your teeth when they buzz." You smile because teeth and steering have never shared a sentence for you. The hulls are cool and smooth, lashings neat as careful handwriting, crossbeams polished by hands and decades. A triangular sail waits like a folded moth. A gourd rattle and a bundle of dried breadfruit chips promise company for the quietest hour. Someone lifts the bow and you lift with them. In 3 steps you are floating, the hull rising under you like a patient horse. The elder steps aboard last, so gently the boat hardly notices. Your knees learn, your feet stop arguing. The lagoon floor slips away into velvet as the canoe glides toward the cut where the sea breathes like a sleeping ancestor. Behind you the breadfruit leaves keep whispering. Far away another village banks its fires until only a thin line of red remembers. The stars refuse to sleep, crowding low and near, curious about the small boat. The elder points. Left of that bright one is the narrow road you'll use. To the right is the shy friend that prefers a cloud's edge. The cut through the reef arrives like a song you knew before you heard it. Swell gathers, hulls lift, and the canoe tilts, reminding you that leaving is a kind of bow. You bow. Spray freckles your face. The air shifts from warm lagoon sweet to ocean clean. A churned path glows briefly behind you, proof that you were here. Ahead, the ocean opens, which is to say, the night opens. Paddles dig and rise with soft rhythm. You press when they press, you rest when they rest. You draw the night into your lungs and let it out as if helping the sea breathe. The elder hums a tune with more tide than melody. The boy answers with a harmony barely louder than breath. You are no longer a passenger. You are one of the many small, steady things that make a voyage. You look back once. The grove is a deeper darkness on the shore, but the leaves still whisper, kindly, as if keeping watch. You face forward and let the canoe settle into the wider breathing, listening for the baseline, watching the hooked cluster of stars, and feeling your own pulse slow until it beats like oars in unhurried time. The reef slips behind you like a zipped seam, and the canoe settles into a long, even breathing that persuades your shoulders to loosen. The elder stands with knees soft, one hand on a crossbeam, and makes a slow circle with his finger along the horizon. He never points at the stars themselves. He points to where they rise and where they sink, as if the ocean owns the sky and merely rents it out nightly. Here, he murmurs, tapping the air above the port bow, is a house. You squint at what looks like empty darkness and feel a little foolish, the pleasant kind where you realize you are about to learn something your body has wanted for a long time. He walks his finger around the world, naming houses only once, the syllables breathed more to the hulls than to you. He pairs stars like a patient matchmaker. This one rises from the east door as that one sinks into the west. When the first is one hand above the rail, the other is 2 fingers from the water. When one is shoulder high, the other kisses the gunwale. The logic is tidy, almost domestic, except for the part where it involves light years and your balance. He trusts you to hold it with your body, not just your mind, and something in your calves agrees. Your brain will chase itself and fall overboard, he says, kind as rain. Let the body do the small arithmetic. He has you face a blank quadrant and close your eyes. Your feet remember the angle of the swells. Your ribs remember the weight of the wind on left cheek, not right. Your tongue remembers the taste of spray when the bow is pleased. Open. You do. A bright point is quietly there, exactly where your skin predicted. Your phone's compass would cry if it saw this, so you pat your pocket in apology and make a small truce with the night. Under your soles, the twin hulls translate swell into sentences. The long swell from an old storm writes a patient underline. The shorter cross swell flickers like a rumor. You learn to read both at once, to know which one to believe when they disagree. Useful beyond boats, you suspect. The elder tilts his head, listening with his kneecaps. Primary from here, he says, chin toward the star house you're keeping. Secondary from there. Breathe with the first, let the second gossip. You try it, and the tiller seems to relax under your hand, grateful you've stopped bossing it around. He shows you a bright star shouldering up from the ocean's lip. It climbs as if tied to a ladder you cannot see. Follow that one until it lifts 2 palms above the rail, he says, raising his own hand, fingers spread. Your palms try the measure. The scale works whether you are monarch or midnight snack enthusiast. When the star reaches that height, you let it slide to your shoulder and catch its partner on the opposite side, a quiet relay across your sky. He gives their formal names, then shares the nicknames the crew prefers. A cook who never sleeps, a fisherman who hums, a turtle who always knows home. You begin to notice the ocean's skin changing under starlight. In the east there is a faint brightening that isn't dawn yet but thinks about it. In the west a deeper bruise that keeps secrets. Clouds wear halos that mean islands somewhere below them are pushing warm air up. Thin mats drift from directions you will later call by the wind's proper names, but for now you file them as gentle, steady, or please tie down your optimism. The elder lifts his chin. Feel how the air warms on your cheek, he says. That is a cousin of the wind we want. If it cools suddenly, its other cousin is arriving, the one who likes to rearrange plans. He kneels and draws with a wet fingertip on the deck, a circle for the canoe, arrowed lines for swells, a dotted path for birds, a triangle for a remembered island whose name stays unspoken because you are still a guest in this boat and in this way. Steer here, he says, and points not at the bow, but at your rib cage. If your shoulders flinch, you've already steered too late. If your knees disagree, you're fighting the ocean. Choose a knee and make friends with it. You try it and discover that attention can be heavier than strength, and that a small breath can move a great deal of boat if taken at the right moment. The boy with the coil of sennet settles near the mast and watches the sky like it owes him money. He calls a name when a star touches the water on the western rim, and the elder nods without looking, which somehow feels like applause. You ask how the map in his mind doesn't smudge. He shrugs. Let the world redraw it every night. If it looks the same, you're not paying attention. Then, because life enjoys timing, a new breeze flicks your ear from the stern quarter, and the sail answers with a soft-bellied sigh as the canoe accepts a slightly kinder angle. He speaks of winds as if they were relatives arriving to the same feast with different salads. One cousin is punctual and dry, reliable as a drumbeat. Another moseys in at noon with gossip and leaves early. A third arrives heavy with thunderheads, pretending to be helpful. You're told which cousin to trust for long runs, which to court at night, which to appease with reefed canvas and small humility. You like the way humility is standard equipment here, not an aftermarket add-on. The crew nods along, not solemn, just practiced, like people who have learned to thank the ocean for saying yes, and to thank it again when it says no. By now you can keep your eyes on the star path while your feet report what the swells tell the hulls. You don't overcorrect. You breathe on the tiller rather than tug it. The elder watches you not with pesty examination, but with the soft surveillance of someone tending a fire. He hums the tide-heavy tune from the beach. The boy adds a second line, and your breath becomes a third. Rhythm helps hold the star houses in mind. You picture them as quiet inns spaced around the horizon, each with a doorbell only the sea can ring. A small flying fish mistakes your hull for a cloud and thwacks a board glittering like misplaced starlight. The boy laughs softly, writes it, and lets it go. A sign of a clean line, the elder says, though he suspects he would have said the same if the fish had missed. Encouragement is also standard equipment. When your eyes tire, you learn the trick. Lower your gaze to the narrow seam where sea meets sky, and let the constellations become a peripheral murmur. The scene tells truth. You can see the slightest yaw there, even when the stars try to distract you with their sparkling gossip. Your shoulders relax, your knees arrive at a truce, and your teeth buzz with that faint steering hum that began as nonsense and now feels like belonging. Somewhere to starboard, a bright friend drops into its western house and closes the door softly. The elder finally sits, eyes half-lidded, not because he doesn't care, but because caring doesn't look like tension out here. Now you know the first circle. You will learn other circles, birds, color, taste in the air, but this one is friendly enough to teach you how to sleep without letting go. You nod, made of thanks, made of salt, made of eyelids agreeing with the night. The canoe moves forward as if nothing in the world would ever rush you again. The two hulls breathe together now, twins with one heartbeat, and you feel the deck's faint give, the woven lashings flexing like knuckles that know exactly how tight to hold. The reef's roar fades behind you into a soft memory, and the canoe stretches out its shoulders. The elder eases the tiller across your palm and introduces the boat the way someone might introduce a family, not with paperwork, but with nicknames that stick. The forward crossbeam is Old Bridge, steady even when gossiping waves crowd the bow. The mid-beam is Breadfruit Table, where bundles will nap and where night stories will sit. The aft beam is Crocodile Smile, because its lashing pattern shows little teeth when the moon leans close. You run a fingertip along the sennit and feel every knot hum at a slightly different pitch, a small orchestra tuned to weather. Crew roles unfold as quietly as dawn. The steersman, tonight that's mostly you, under supervision from a tiller that knows better, keeps the star house at the right shoulder and listens to the big swell's sentence under the chatter of the smaller one. The sheet tender lounges like a cat by the main sheet, except cats don't pay this much attention. His job is to let the sail breathe and then rein it in before it sighs itself silly. The lookout kneels at the bow with knees forgiving and eyes half-lidded, not in laziness, but in long practice at seeing the glimmer that means driftwood, or the darker wrinkle that means a shy reef tooth. The bailer, respected and teased in equal measure, guards the hulls from the ocean's small optimism. He lifts water with a rhythm that belongs in a lullaby. The boy with the coil becomes the lashing watcher, fingers always reassessing, like a tailor checking seams before a wedding. The sail steps up when invited, a crab-claw wing that wakes with a polite shiver. They call its two arms the shark and the moth, not in warning, just in affection. The leading edge, stitched with care, is mermaid's comb. You keep your mouth shut about how your own comb snapped last week because the sail does not need to know your hair drama. A work song begins, not loud, not showing off. The melody moves like a long breath. Each verse praises a part. Old Bridge holds the sky. Breadfruit table keeps secrets. Crocodile smile bites the wind just enough to keep it flirting. When the crew reaches Mermaid's Combe, the sheet tender smiles into his hands and gives the sail a little more line. The canoe lifts as if glad someone finally remembered its favorite compliment. Names weave through the lashings as if the knots could listen. The X pattern by the mast is turtleback. The anchoring spiral at the beam's end is moonshell. A humble square knot near the bailer station is anti-knot. Never pretty, never failing. You try not to stare, but you are staring because every part is listened to, thanked, and made responsible in return. The elder catches your look. If you name a thing, he says, eyes on the horizon seam, you give it permission to talk back when you forget it. You file that away for the next time your brain tries to carry the whole boat in its teeth. Clearing the reef means timing a set, and even though you're past the cut, the ocean is still testing your manners. The lookout raises a hand, 2 fingers, then 1, reading a larger swell rolling up from the southeast. Wait on it, the elder murmurs, and the paddlers, a rotating duty everyone takes except the tiller hand, dip blades in a soft ready. The swell lifts the canoe like a slow elevator, and on the downside the paddlers give 3 honest strokes, just enough to settle you into the rhythm the ocean prefers tonight. Your gym membership, if it could see you, would politely pack its things. A snag announces itself with a small sulky tug on the sheet. Not drama, just the boat asking for a scratch it cannot reach. The sheet tender's hand answers before his eyes do, a flick and a cleat kiss, and the line behaves as if it only wanted attention. Happens when Mermaid's Combe gets shy, he says, straight-faced. You believe him because, frankly, the sail looks a little bashful. The boy slides forward to soothe a complaining lashing at Old Bridge with a dab of oil that smells faintly of roasted nuts. Easier than soothing uncles, he whispers. You nod as if you also have uncles and oils for them. The elder has you feel the canoe's grammar again. Subject, verb, object, all written in swell. The subject is the long pulse from far away. The verb is the wind slipping down your cheek. The object is where you ask to go. When you confuse them, the canoe writes a muddled sentence and the ocean raises an eyebrow. You loosen your shoulders and read again. This time the syntax holds. Your teeth resume their small necessary buzzing, the one you once laughed at and now keep like a secret mantra. Roles rotate, not because anyone is bored, but because a boat prefers a crew with no weak corners. The bailer becomes lookout, the lookout becomes singer of tempo, and you trade the tiller to the elder for a spell to let your knees remember they exist for more than balance. You join the paddlers for a few soft sets, blades entering and leaving the water like whispers at the edge of a dream. The stroke leader murmurs numbers that are not numbers, more like flavors, coconut, reef, cloud, rest, each meaning a slightly different length and pressure. You find your breath matching the catalog until you no longer need the words. Someone produces a tiny clay cup and taps it against the mast twice before handing it along. It holds a sip of something that tastes like baked fruit and smoke. And while you're not about to accuse the breadfruit grove of moonlighting, you make a mental note to thank the trees later. The sip goes around once, no refills, not because they are stingy, but because the night prefers clarity and the ocean respects moderation. Jokes are treated the way knots are tied, quietly, sturdy, meant to hold. The double hull proves its opinion about waves by ignoring most of them. When a cross-chop slaps the starboard bow, the port hull chuckles and carries the tone for a few beats. You feel how the platform asks your ankles to be fair to both sides. You adjust without thinking, a tiny correction that would be invisible if your feet weren't keeping score. The elder nods and doesn't say good job, which in this language means exactly that. Ahead, the sky keeps its promises. To leeward, the horizon shows that faint paler bloom that means water shallow somewhere out there, maybe tomorrow's interest. The crew speaks around it without pointing, because naming before knowing is impolite. Back at Crocodile Smile, an anti-knot gets retied, and the boy sings a nonsense line about crocodiles preferring compliments to goats. The boat agrees by not creaking. You settle back to the tiller for another watch, and the elder, half turned towards the star house, rests a hand lightly on your wrist, not correcting, just reminding you that steering is a conversation. You answer by softening your fingers until the tiller feels less like a lever and more like a pulse you share. The two hulls keep breathing like one chest. Old Bridge, Breadfruit Table, and Crocodile Smile keep their tiny choir going. Mermaid's Comb keeps flirting properly with the breeze. And the night, which could be dramatic if it wanted, decides to be generous instead. The canoe is a household on holiday, each part praised into doing exactly what it loves. And you, improbable cousin, have a bunk on the platform and a job with a hum in the teeth. You notice it first as mischief in the water, not spectacle in the sky. The ocean's long handwriting wavers where it should flow. The elder rests two fingers on Old Bridge and tilts his ear to the swell. Something interrupts the sentence, he says, curious rather than worried. Your teeth report a new harmony. Same tune, softer echo, as if another choir warms up behind the curtain. The lookout shades his eyes, though it's deep night, and points at an absence, a pale stripe where the surface looks ironed. Wake, he whispers. Not wind, but smoothing made by something beyond sight, bending the swell. Islands do that, the way a stone in a river draws silky arrows. You file the arrow in your ribs. Clouds begin their quiet theater. On the eastern rim, a small dome rises, not traveling, but accumulating in place. House cloud, the boy says. The elder doesn't change heading. You keep the star door on your shoulder. One sign is a rumor, he says. Two signs begin a story. Birds add the next line. First, a flick of white, then three. Wing beats, quick, certain, aimed at breakfast. Turns, the lookout breathes. High above, a frigate bird glides toward the same patch and circles once, then twice. Watercolor changes so slowly, you might call it imagination. Still, the elder has you scoop a palmful and tip it back. In starlight, the sea looks like night, yet the black softens, green tea more than coffee. Shallower somewhere, he says. Not here. Somewhere. Your mind sharpens, your knees vote patience. Your nose, usually loyal to salt, files a delicate report. Damp earth, a ribbon of leaf, the ghost of flowers that don't belong out here. You doubt it? Then you can't stop noticing. If the breeze turns, you'll lose it, the elder says. You make an invisible mark by pressing your tongue to the roof of your mouth, the way you did when you learned the star houses. A second cloud links arms with the first. The underside gathers sheen. For a breath, its belly flashes lagoon tint. The boy's grin is a shadow. Will be fed, he tells breadfruit table. Debris introduces itself. A chewed coconut husk bobs past, fibers combed and clean. A slim branch follows, with 3 leaves, spaced like a child's drawing. The lookout rubs a ribbon of seagrass. New, he says. Old things get salted into sameness. This still carries shade. Your job is simple and impossible. Keep the star house steady while hearing everything else sing. The tiller is a wrist story now. You stay on the line the elder drew in your body, and let your other instruments, nose, skin, tongue, knees, be curious. When you drift a hair toward impatience, the elder's hand finds your forearm, reminding you that steering is listening with bones. A lesson arrives as embarrassment. To leeward, a tall thunderhead flips an anvil like a hat. There, your mouth says, before your manners. Island. The elder squints the way an aunt inspects shoes. Maybe, he allows, but keeps his attention on birds, color, smell. An hour later, the cloud struts away with the wind, leaving only a damp idea and your new habit of waiting. The swell tutors again. The old patient line from the southeast keeps its phrase, but beneath it a faint opposing hum arrives, like singing behind a door. Rebound, the lookout says, the far swell's cousin returning from land you cannot yet see. Narrow lanes of smoother water stitch themselves across your path. You steered neither lane as a road, you greet them as elders. Acknowledge, don't interrupt. Night thins. The horizon loses its pencil edge and becomes a careful smudge. Birds multiply. Noddies now, dusky silhouettes skimming low with serious purpose. The sea's color pretends nothing is changing while telling the truth, black to deep blue to something that remembers plants. Twice you glimpse an impossible shoreline. Twice the ocean keeps its secret. You catch yourself leaning forward as if posture could move continents. The elder laughs softly. It sees you, he says. Don't crowd it. You ease back and let the boat be a boat. The house cloud fattens. The smell of green strengthens a notch. Your teeth resume their quiet hymn. You could bully the tiller toward the cloud. You do not. You keep the star path true and let the sea present its pocket treasure in its own time. A booby skims low from port, belly white as a dropped shell, and the lashings hum as if Auntie Knot has approved the plan. Far ahead of seeing, you know. So does the crew. Old bridge lays its weight. Mermaid's comb flirts. Crocodile smile shows its little teeth. The day not yet born clears its throat. Somewhere beyond that ironed seam, a ring of sand and trees begins to pull a thread gently through your chest. You do not celebrate, not yet. You breathe, keep your promise to the star house, and press your tongue up once more, as if tasting breadfruit roasted in a fire that hasn't been lit. The island does not leap out. It exhales. The pale iron stripe grows into a pass where whitewater arranges itself politely, and you ride the swell's shoulder through the reef as if it has been saving you a seat. The lagoon turns the world into a bowl of light. Greens you don't have names for, blues you'd happily argue about. A sandy road stretched beneath the canoe like a path you somehow deserve. Your mouth still tastes of salt, that cathedral spice that refuses to leave the tongue quickly. You keep it there on purpose, like a souvenir you can swallow. On shore, the breadfruit grove shakes awake. Leaves applaud in their squeaky way, large hands gossiping about boats. Smoke slips through the trunks in blue ribbons, and the wind brings the smell of hot stones and leaf-wrapped dinners like a promise in a language you already understand. You've been at sea long enough that steam means family, even if the family is new. As the canoe kisses the shallows, people stroll, not rush, to the waterline. No rush because the ocean already did the hard part. They wade out with the small, confident steps of folks who know where every stingray dreams. Hands reach to the gunwales, calloused, resin-scented, bracelets of plaited fiber. Your hulls feel those hands and sigh like tired shoulders finding a bed. Old bridge hums approval, crocodile's smile shows a few content teeth, mermaids comb preens just a little because, yes, we navigated here, thank you for noticing. Garlands arrive first, fragrant loops of white and cream, blossoms bruised just enough by fingers to release perfume. A girl whose hair is collected the morning ties threads of shell into your wrist and grins at the boy from your crew as if they've been trading jokes all year. With the easy gravity of home, two elders greet your elder, touching foreheads lightly, breaths shared and eyes closed for a heartbeat. When they turn to you, you remember to bow your height down. Salt, smoke, and flour meet between you, and for a moment your eyelids vote for napping mid-greeting. You manage to stay awake. Barely. They don't ask where you're from, not right away. They ask if the wind behaved, if your Auntie Knot kept her promises, if you remembered to feed the bailer sweet words during the cranky hour before dawn. You answer honestly, which is to say, you praise the boat and apologize to no one in particular for your early oversteering. That wins you a kind of membership card you can't lose. Laughter, not at you, but around you, the warm kind that shortens distance. Canoes are hauled with a song that makes lifting feel like swaying. The boy runs ahead to lay down smooth halves of coconut trunks so hulls don't scuff. In the shade of the canoe house, a high A-frame perfumed with breadfruit sap and old rope, your crew eases the vessel onto her rollers. A woman pats the platform as you would a patient animal. Someone else sprinkles water along the lashings, so the senate drinks and tightens. You see a new lashing pattern here, starfish knot, bright with lime ash, and you promise yourself to make room in your mind for one more name. The earth oven lives a little inland where the sandy ground holds heat like a friend. The pit is covered in woven mats and glossy leaves. The mats are lifted with a flourish that moves more air than necessary, a tiny theater so the first breath of steam can wash everyone's face. It smells like roasted breadfruit, like taro wearing its best leaf jacket, like fish easing into coconut cream, like the quiet sweetness of banana pretending to be serious. You decide instantly that complicated cuisines are overrated, and this is what food wanted to be when it grew up. Before eating comes a small procession of thanks. A bowl of water passes from hand to hand, and a few drops are flicked back toward the sea. The elder speaks a sentence to the stones in the oven, as if old friends had done each other favors again. No one claps, they simply stand in the perfume and let gratitude season the air. Then it's plates, woven trays, banana leaves folded into shallow boats, and a gentle scramble you can keep up with if you're humble. A boy places a wedge of breadfruit in your palm, so hot you juggle softly. He pretends not to see your dance. Coconut cream is poured with the slow care of someone telling a favorite story. And you watch the white river find the roasted fish and quiet it. Salt still insists on your lips, but now it has company. You taste smoke the way the canoe house remembers voices. You taste a pinch of seaweed, a squeeze of sour from a fruit you can't name without starting an argument with botany. A woman fans you with a palm frond anyway, though a breeze moves steadily through the grove. It is not about cooling, you realize, but about being included in the choreography of care. You try a few words in the local tongue, and the laughter you get is the correction kind, friendly as paddles tapping a hull in encouragement. You repeat. The word fixes itself. Auntie Knot would approve. After plates are satisfied and mats repaid for their service, the island's small museum opens without a building. People. A net mender shows you how to tease a knot into kindness. A mat weaver's fingers move so fast, you're convinced time slows to watch. A child scales a coconut like a gecko and drops 3 down, each bounce a note. You are told where not to sit, thresholds because they are doors, and where to place your feet at night so you don't step on sleeping mats or dignity. You learn that the canoe house is both chapel and workshop. Voices inside are kept soft, not from fear, but because wood remembers tone. Someone leads you along the lagoon's curve to the place where breadfruit is planted in a spiral that matches the star houses. So we don't forget what feeds us, the elder explains, and though he could mean the fruit, you hear the bigger sentence. Pigs gossip in the underbrush, chickens invent errands, and a lazy dog performs the heavy labor of looking content. You lend a hand to flip a leaf-wrapped parcel on the embers. It hisses approval and releases a sigh that could tuck you into a nap right there on the sand. They ask for your story, only after you've helped carry a bundle to a neighbor too old to walk to the grove. Your story is small, and they let it be. You do not become interesting by talking louder. You become part of the place by walking at the place's pace. The elder on your left points to the ridge where the house cloud lounged at dawn and says, "That one keeps forgetting to bring rain." The elder on your right adds, "We forgive it. It is pretty." You find yourself forgiving many things you didn't know you held grudges against: clocks, inboxes, shoes. By late afternoon, the lagoon shines like a bowl someone polished with a soft cloth. The canoe dozes on her rollers. Auntie Knot naps with one eye open. Breadfruit table pretends not to eavesdrop on jokes. Sleepy laughter drifts through the grove, the kind that doesn't need a punchline, the kind that says the day survived its own excitement. The salt on your lips has faded to a memory, replaced by the faint sweetness of smoke and the floral trace of garlands now resting on a post. You feel the day tip toward the hour when stories get longer and voices get slower. The island has welcomed you not with fanfare, but with the excellent manners of a place that trusts time. You exhale slower than you inhaled, and the breadfruit leaves answer with a rustle that sounds a lot like yes. Under the canoe house, the air is the color of tea and smells faintly of breadfruit sap, salt, and sun-warmed rope. Light filters through the thatch and patient stripes, and dust motes pretend they are small stars invited to the mat. You sit cross-legged, with your heels tucked the way you were shown, never on the threshold, never with feet pointing rudely at the bow. The elder settles beside a coil of sennet that looks alive and taps it with a knuckle. This one, he says, remembers storms you haven't met yet. You touch the braid. It's dry on the skin, but holds a breath of oil, as if someone taught it manners. Cordage lore begins with a coconut husk and ends with a boat that trusts you. They show you how the husk is soaked until it loosens its stubbornness, then shaken and beaten into long fibers that shimmer when rinsed. The boy twists 3 strands into one, then 3 of those into another, humming the same slow tune you heard at sea. If your breath stumbles, your line will, he says, not scolding, just handing you a rhythm. You try. The first few inches behave like a toddler at nap time. Then your fingers learn to pass, pinch, and roll. The mat weaver watches and nods at your wrists the way a gardener nods at rain. Lashings have personalities here. Turtleback curves around a beam with patient certainty. Moonshell spirals at a post's end until it looks carved, not tied. Anti-knot sits wherever it can keep the family together without fuss, and no one complains that she is plain. Starfish knot gleams with a dusting of lime ash, the elder's trick for keeping teeth out of the fibers. Each pattern has a song, not for romance, but for timing. 4 poles and a breath, 2 hitches and a hum, pinch, set, there. When you forget, the elder taps the mat. The mat somehow remembers too. The lesson turns to lashing rhythms. A younger navigator, sharp eyes, soft voice, lays Old Bridge across trestles and invites you to help refit a tired tie. We don't wait for the sea to teach us a lesson, she says. We study before class. She sets the line and asks you to hold tension with your whole body, not your face. You breathe through the pull until the fibers sing a thin, even note. Then set the hitch with your thumb's small bone. It feels like tuning an instrument your hands have always wanted to play. Someone dabs coconut oil mixed with crushed candle nut along the lay so the fibers can drink, and the whole beam sighs into its work as if grateful to be remembered. You make your first mistake in public, which is perfect. Trying to impress no one, you over-tighten a turn on Crocodile Smile's lashing and hear a creak you don't like. 3 heads tilt. No one winces. The elder touches your forearm and guides your breath back out, loosening a whisper, then sets a wedge of wood to spread the load. Tight is not the opposite of safe. Balanced is. He shows you how to shift the crossing angle half a finger so strain distributes like gossip at a feast. No one person burdened with the whole scandal. You tie again. This time the creak is replaced by a small, satisfied hum. You receive the tiniest applause possible, 2 knuckles on wood, yet it warms your ribs like soup. Paddle etiquette arrives with a stack of blades that glint where seawater has polished their edges. You are taught never to step over a paddle, never to point with one, never to lean on it as if it were a face between you and work. When passing a paddle, you offer the handle first, blade turned inward, so you don't gift your neighbor a splash or a bruise. Paddles rest blade up on the gunwale, twins aligned like calm eyebrows. The stroke leader demonstrates the difference between stabbing and placing. The first offends the water, the second invites it to help. He shows you how to feather the exit, so droplets slip without applause. Save the clapping for feasts, he grins. And how to match your breath to the smallest swell so your shoulders don't try to be heroes. There are indoor rules for voices too. In the canoe house, jokes wear soft shoes. Commands are suggestions with backbone. Someone whistles and 3 aunties flinch. The elder smiles and shakes his head. Later, on the wind, you can do that. Here, the house listens. You file it next to thresholds and feet, and the way names are used like gentle rains on careless energy. Cordage continues in hands all around you. A grandmother with fingers like sea roots teaches you to splice the bitter end into a loop without bulk. She speaks to the line, simple words fond as if greeting a stubborn nephew, and you unconsciously imitate, asking the fibers to lie down and be good. When the splice vanishes into itself, she pats your knuckles and says, "Now it will pretend it was always whole." A small problem arrives honest and on time. A lashing at breadfruit table has dried too much in yesterday's sun, and the Senate begins to whisper a complaint. The boy catches it before it turns into an argument and calls for water. You fetch a bowl and pour along the tie as instructed, slow enough that the fibers can drink without coughing. The lashing darkens, swells into the comfort of its own design, and quiets. Relief tickles the house like wind through thatch. "Plants still," the younger navigator says, tapping the braid. "Treat them like living. They'll behave like living." Paddle drills roll into a miniature procession outside. You walk in a line to the water, blades against shoulders, then enter as one so the canoe doesn't feel poked. The stroke leader calls a tempo that sounds like daylight, low, patient, a back porch rhythm. You practice keeping your elbows low, your wrist soft, your blade clean on the exit. A lazy dog watches from the shade and judges no one. When you splash yourself by forgetting the feather, you stifle a laugh. Your neighbor pretends he didn't see, the kindest lesson of all. They speak of taboos the way city people talk about crosswalks, practical, not mystical. Don't sit on the bow, it's a face. Don't drag paddles, they deserve better. Don't tie a showy knot where anti-knot belongs. Pride should never hold the roof up. If your mind wanders, hum the lashing song so your fingers remember what your attention forgot. And if you must argue, do it on land where the floor's feelings are less easily hurt. By late afternoon, the rafters glow like old honey, and the house smells even more of breadfruit sap. You coil the last line in the direction it was twisted, or it will sulk later, someone warns, and stow paddles with their siblings. A bowl of cool water passes. You rinse rope dust from your palms, and the elder rubs a leaf between his fingers until it bleeds green, then presses it across your small rope burn. The sting shrugs and goes quiet. Outside, the breadfruit grove rustles its approval, that paper-soft applause you'd started to look for without meaning to. Someone mentions the lagoon market's tide mark by the jetty, shells weighed against salted fish, stories traded for coconut water. You stand, stretching the good ache from your knees, and the canoe house lets you go with a last little creak that sounds suspiciously like, "Come back and check my lashings tomorrow." The path to the jetty is a ribbon of sand, stamped with basket prints and the tidy hieroglyphs of crabs. The market opens when the water kisses the third notch on the post. Today, it has already slipped past the second, green and glassy, eager, without being rude. You fall into a flow that never hurries. People moving with baskets on hips, mats under arms, shade awnings bundled like sleeping bats. The air tastes of salt and a little sugar from fruit cut earlier. Somewhere, a knife whispers against a husk, and a laugh follows, as if the joke were inside the coconut all along. A low wind lifts the hair at your neck and pushes the lagoon's skin into little shivers. Your knees keep time with the planks beneath your feet, because after a night of steering by ribs and teeth, you can't help it. Your body is still a compass that refuses to clock out. Stalls are less stalls than ideas set down gently. A mat, a low table, a patch of shade, a small mountain of something that came from the lagoon or the grove. The tide mark runs along the jetty boards in a stain you could read like a calendar if you lived here. Darker where yesterday lingered, paler where the last spring tide told jokes and then left. "We said here," a woman says, tapping a nail's shadow with her toe. So the first splash is applause, not eviction. You nod like a local and try to stand where your curiosity doesn't block anyone's story. Nets dry on driftwood arms. Bundles of plaited cord lie like sleeping snakes. A tray of shell hooks glints as though each one had been dipped in dusk. Fish rest in salt like crescent moons napping on a white beach. You begin with coconut water, because that is how all good diplomacy starts. The seller is a man whose smile lives in his eyes and whose machete understands the difference between flourish and function. He twirls the nut just a little, then clips the cap neatly. The lid pops as if happy to see you. "Price," he says, and points not to coins but to a bench, a story bench, smooth as a river stone, warmed by 100 tales. Your elder leans with the quiet pleasure of watching you earn your drink. So you tell them about the star houses, about the way your teeth buzzed when you finally believed your knees, about mermaid's comb flirting with the wind and Auntie Knot refusing to be glamorous but saving the day anyway. The man hands you the coconut as if it has been listening the whole time. You drink, and the sweetness slides behind your ears, calm as a fan turned to its lowest hum. You wander, nursed by the coconut, pretending you aren't memorizing everything. Shell bracelets curl like tame waves. Breadfruit chips crackle in leaf packets, smoky and shy. A child rolls a breadfruit across his forearms like a tame planet and looks pleased with gravity. The lazy market dog, clearly on management's side, has elected to supervise the dried seaweed and is asleep on the job. A girl shows you how to knot a small cord with the same rhythm you learned under the canoe house roof. Her fingers hum the lashing song without knowing she's singing it. Every so often the lagoon lifts its voice and pats the jetty. Vendors glance down and adjust baskets by a thumb's width. The choreography of people who speak Tide as a first language. At the far end, a balance scale stands like an invitation. Its beam is driftwood polished by palms. Its pans are shells big enough to be bowls. Weigh or trade? Asks the woman who tends it, eyebrow amused. Both, you answer, bold, because sleepiness has made you honest. She places a strip of cured fish on one pan, then drops shell weights into the other. 1, 2, and then a small clamshell that looks like a wry smile. The pans nudge toward level. Your contribution, she asks, and you set your story there, quietly, like a stone you've been saving in your pocket. She listens, nodding at the part where you mistook a thunderhead for an island and learned to wait, and she adds a tiny shell, a thank you for admitting impatience. The pans level. Fair, she says, and the fish becomes yours, leaf-wrapped, warm as a good secret. You meet a carver whose hands carry the memory of trees. He shows you paddle blades in miniature, charms that hang from cords like blessings. Not to control the sea, he says, just to remind your shoulders how to be patient. He taps the wood and it rings softly, a knock on your own ribs. You buy nothing because he asks nothing. You promise to practice patience anyway, and consider that a purchase for which he charges your future behavior. He approves with a nod so small it might be mistaken for the wind. The problem arrives ankle-deep and polite. The tide, misreading everyone's schedule, climbs a little faster than the shade awnings were promised. A ripple sneaks under a mat and nudges a pile of shells toward the wrong adventure. A boy squeaks, the carver snags the mat, and 3 vendors laugh in the tone reserved for small, fixable inconveniences. You step in, without making a speech. After all, you have practice with moving things that prefer balance over drama. You gathered the sliding shells with both hands, feeling their cool whisper, and set them into the high pan of the scale so they stop traveling. The woman of the scale flips the beam up and away like a wing, then nods toward the awning that is determined to become a sail. You grab a corner and hold. The breeze considers adopting the cloth when the elder glides in with a wedge and a quick half-hitch. You hear yourself humming the lashing song. 4 pulls and a breath, 2 hitches and a hum, pinch, set, there, and the canvas loses interest in adventure. The water salutes the 3rd notch sooner than planned. Vendors lift their mats in a casual migration uphill by half a body length. The market becomes the same market, just a slightly more inland, as if the island took a patient step back while smiling. You carry a tray for a woman whose wrists remember too many seasons of carrying. She rewards you with a small cone of grated coconut, sweetened with cane syrup, and a joke about how tide and gossip both move fastest when you want a nap. You agree with your mouth full, which is the ideal time to agree. With the small crisis solved, eating resumes its rightful throne. You learn the etiquette of tasting. Always take the first piece you touch. Never rearrange a tray with your opinions. Praise the cook in a sentence that mentions the ocean and the fire as equal partners. You practice until it stops being practice. Your coconut is empty. The seller rehomes it to the compost basket with a satisfied pat. You exchange your leaf-wrapped fish for a handful of tiny limes someone claims will sing if squeezed over anything that once swam. They do not sing out loud, but your tongue hears a bright note anyway. Stories become currency again. An old fisherman trades you a memory of a season when they misread birds and spent an extra night at sea. The moral is patience, of course, but he tells it as if patience were a new aunt who keeps arriving with better desserts. You give him your tale about the rebounding swell you felt before dawn. He grins into his salt-streaked beard and says, "Your knees are learning to hear." The compliment lands like a shell in the right pan. He tucks your story somewhere behind his eyes for later, the way navigators store small stars just below the horizon. By late morning, the market begins to fold itself with the same kindness it opened. The tide mark glistens darker now. The water tastes of noon. People leave with less than they brought and more than they needed. You head back toward the grove with a coil of clean line, a leaf-wrapped bundle, and a head of small, useful manners. The dog decides your pace is appropriate and escorts you halfway, then retires to the shade with a sigh that accuses the sun of ambition. Under the breadfruit trees, the leaves lift and lay themselves down again, a paper-soft applause. Somewhere behind you, the balance scale settles, the shell pans breathing once, twice, and then going very still, as if the morning stories had finally found their proper weight. You wake to the hush that exists just before a place remembers it's beautiful. Breadfruit leaves brush one another like soft pages. The lagoon wears a skin of pewter that will soon decide on silver. People walk without speaking much, carrying garlands, a bowl of seawater, a little basket of powdered coral that looks like captured dawn. You follow a path you have learned to trust, past the canoe house that creaks later, past the market's patient posts with their tide marks along sand that keeps last night's barefoot arithmetic, and arrive where the sacred stones keep watch, a raised platform of old coral blocks that seem to breathe if your eyelids lower the right amount. No one announces anything. The elders step onto the marae as if entering a well-kept story. You remove your sandals where the young navigator taps, then touch the cool stone with your fingertips, the way you might greet Old Bridge or breadfruit table. The stones are taller than you expect and darker, their edges softened by weather and ceremonies you will never know. At their base lie tokens, small polished shells, a length of sinnet coiled like a sleeping question mark, two feathers that refuse to be arranged. The air here tastes of salt and green, and a thin floral ribbon from last night's garlands drying on a low wall. You stand where you are shown and let your shoulders organize the ocean's hum again, because even on land your ribs still steer. When the first chant begins, it is not loud. The elder closest to you lifts his hands as if balancing a bowl and names a star you already know by its modern label and its island name and its boat name, a cook who never sleeps. He turns to face its house on the horizon, then turns slowly to the opposite side and gives the name of its partner, the fisherman who hums. A young boy traces a line in powdered coral on the stone between those two directions, and the line looks like nothing until a second elder names the wind that usually attends that pair and the current that prefers to accompany it. You see it then, a sea road sketched on rock, a memory map in white. They move around the platform like a clock made of people. Each stone remembers a rising, a setting, a wind, a swell, a favored cloud shape. A woman touches a notch in one stone and says a word you learned on the jetty, the tide mark, and another woman sets a shell there, then another a finger's width above it. Seasons, your elder murmurs, and even though you do not know when this island's year begins, your knees nod as if they have always kept calendars by how the ocean breathes. Your turn comes without ceremony. An elder gestures that pleasant circle from eye to chest to stone, the invitation to speak without trying to own the speaking. You say what you remember, the long southeast swell that writes the underline of this part of the ocean, the gossiping cross swell, the night you almost believed a thunderhead was an island until the birds disagreed. Laughter touches 3 mouths and is gone, friendly as the balance scale's shell clicking toward level. You add the house cloud that kept its promise above the ridge, and the smell of green that reached you before dawn. A girl pours an arcing pinch of coral dust between 2 stones, linking your small report to an older path. Not a trophy, more like threading a shell onto a long necklace. Far out, beyond the outer reef where yesterday's swell leaned its elbows, the sky thickens. It does not spread, it gathers. The anvil top flips up, pale and frowning, and the cloud belly takes on the color of wet iron. No one stops. The chant continues. Winds enumerated like cousins, currents like old debts paid on time, but the younger navigator is watching with her sea kneecaps. She says, "There," and you feel the word in your ankles before you decide it's true. The breeze applies a new hand to your cheek, cooler with that metallic hint you've learned to respect. Birds alter their commute plan, noddies lower, terns take a higher lane. The frigate bird becomes a punctuation mark suspended over the same patch of horizon. Somewhere, a dog sits up and decides to be interested in meteorology. The elders fold the chant into action the way you might fold a leaf around cooked fish. No rush, all intention. A runner peels off toward the canoe house to ask Auntie Knot to check her posture. A boy heads for the reef pass beacon to hang a small palm frond that means, "Do not be ambitious unless you have tea and patience." The younger navigator gathers you and 3 more into the shade of the low wall and sketches with a charred stick on smooth coral. Your lagoon, the pass, the outer curve where the squall will likely braze, the lee you'll use, the idle roads you'll avoid, and the if that every plan needs. Her lines are the lashing song turned into drawing, 4 strokes and a breath, 2 curves and a hum, pinch, set, there. You practice the signals not with whistles, the house would object, but with hands and short calls that behave. 2 palms up means reef the sail a handspan. 1 hand rolling means let the sheet breathe. A flat hand slicing low means keep your story small and your bow pointed home. You and the boy who prefers mermaid's comb agree to watch each other's knees for drift panic. The elder overhears and pretends not to. This is encouragement in the local dialect. The chant resumes in a hush while plans settle. A shell touches each stone in turn, a soft tap that sounds like rain being polite. Gratitude is portioned out, a drizzle of seawater along the platform's edge, 2 garlands unknotted and laid at the base where roots would be if stone had roots. You add your coconut fiber wrist thread to the pile without making it a poem. The younger navigator speaks toward the reef with that tone you've heard used for dogs and cousins and winds, friendly, firm, no sarcasm. Come if you must, but be brief. We have children who nap. Back at the canoe house, the quiet is the noiseless kind that happens when everyone is working the same idea. Mermaid's comb is rolled and ready. Auntie Knot checks her cousins and approves. Starfish Knot gets a lick of oil. Crocodile Smile receives a wedge to widen its grin against strain. You fetch storm lines from a chest that smells like old voyages and sunrise. You coil them in the direction their fibers prefer, because sulking rope is the unfun flavor of rope. The elders decide that 2 canoes will idle outside the pass under short cloth to shepherd the others in if the squall outruns its manners. You are assigned to the second boat's tiller for the first hour because your ribs have learned to listen even when your eyes are trying to be heroes. While everyone moves, the breadfruit grove shakes in that friendly murmur as if rustling an extra blanket over the island. The storm still squats beyond the reef, undecided about how dramatic to be. You touch Old Bridge and Breadfruit Table and Crocodile Smile in order, a small habit now. Then rest your palm on the mast and let your teeth buzz that faint steering hymn. It steadies you so thoroughly you nearly doze standing up. The elder's hand on your shoulder is warm and resin-scented. He says, "We sail small tonight," which is not a warning so much as a lullaby with a to-do list. You nod. The stones behind you hold the map. The chant still rings somewhere behind your knees. And before the sun claws itself fully into the sky, you and the others are ready, sails reefed, signals agreed, soft voices tuned for the kind of night that asks you to remember every gentle thing you've been taught, and to use it without hurry. Night folds down like a woven mat, snug at the corners, leaving a few pinholes where stubborn stars blink. 2 canoes slip through the pass under short cloth. You take the second tiller with quiet hands. Mermaid's Comb is reefed to a modest wing. Old Bridge has been stroked for luck. Crocodile Smile shows just enough teeth to keep you honest. Outside, the water turns to charcoal and silk, and the wind presses a thoughtful palm against your left cheek, as if asking, "Ready to listen?" The squall ahead is not roaring, it is concentrating. A dark belly gathers over the outer water and lets down gray curtains that open and close. Stars wink out, return, and hide again. You let the sky be moody and do arithmetic with your body. Ribs for the long southeast swell, knees for the shorter westbourne lift, teeth for that faint helm hum the elder promised, cheek for wind that prefers attention over strength. The lead canoe dips its hooded lantern once, we see it too, and you answer by easing the bow a patient hair toward the friendliest angle, unhurried as good manners. Signals travel between boats like polite birds. 2 palms up, reef another handspan. A rolling hand, give the sheet a breath. Fingers obey without chatter. 4 poles and a breath, 2 hitches and a hum, pinch, set, there. Rain begins as rumor and becomes soft applause on canvas and skin. It rends down the mast in paths you could trace blind. Your shirt turns to river. Your certainty does not. The first test isn't wind, it's honesty. The long swell writes its patient underline. Beneath it, a shorter lift tries to steal the sentence. Your wrists want to honor both. Your ribs choose one. You keep the bow inside the longer line and let the short one gossip along the platform. The boat thanks you by not rolling its eyes. A gust shoulders in from the beam. The lookout slices a hand low. Keep the story small, bow home. And you ease 2 heartbeats to windward. Spray rises in admiration rather than protest. Lightning shirt sleeves the far horizon for a 1-count photograph. Silver sea, slanted rain, your companion canoe keeping station like a patient comma. Darkness folds back over the page, but the picture stays on the back of your eyelids. Long swell true, cross chop manageable, wind a little fickle. When a star break opens, one bright friend lifting 2 fingers above the water, you mark the angle in your spine, then steer by memory when the door shuts again. The flotilla breathes together. The lead canoe a sentence ahead, yours the clause that follows. The third boat a careful echo. Now and then a paddle taps twice on a gunwale, adjusting, and you answer with the tiniest change of pressure. Auntie Knot keeps her opinions to herself, which is her loudest praise. Breadfruit table takes the rein without complaint. Mermaid's comb throws beads of water like a hard-working leaf. The lashings flex and settle, living plant fibers remembering storms they have already outlived. The squall fattens directly overhead. Rain goes from advice to assignment. Gusts sharpen, cold coins against your cheekbone, and the sea's handwriting thickens. 2 palms again, you reef to the sensible minimum. Even wet, fingers make tidy work of it. The boat relaxes, smaller and more honest. Across the rain, the lead canoe mirrors your trim. The braid holds. You taste metal and green on the air, storm and island arguing somewhere out of sight. Your knees choose island whenever they can. For a while the world reduces to 3 instruments: swell memory under your soles, wind on your face, and the occasional star break that blinks like a shy lighthouse. You steer with ribs and polite stubbornness. The tiller feels less like wood and more like a shared pulse. When your brain tries to sprint, you hum the lashing cadence, 4 poles and a breath, and your shoulders remember not to over-explain. The younger navigator in the bow reads the rain for windows. There, she whispers, pointing not up, but out, to the seam where sky learns to be sea. You see it too, a lighter notch on the horizon too steady to be accident, a star's absence with edges. You carry that notch on your shoulder the way you carried a star earlier, and let the clouds tantrum pass without buying a ticket. A harder gust arrives with confetti spray and the quick cold that makes people invent new saints. You ride it with one patient breath, then another, and slide the bow a thought to windward, so the hulls take the slap on their terms. The lead canoe dips its lantern and raises it, still with you, and the third boat answers by tapping twice on its gunwale. The flotilla stretches, shortens, and stretches again like a single creature remembering how to breathe. Then the back edge comes almost shy. The rain thins from curtain to gauze. Gusts lose their barbs and become wind again. The air warms a notch. A wider door opens, and your chosen star steps back onto its mark exactly 2 palms above the rail, as dependable as breadfruit season. You slide the bow a thought to starboard until the house sits where it belongs, and the boat lengthens into that long cooperative sentence you already trust. Your ribs loosen, your knees stop muttering. Your teeth keep the quiet hymn that never abandoned you. Stars return in clicks. The seam brightens. You signal, "Let the sail breathe," and the message passes boat to boat like a yawn. The sheet tender pays out a kiss of line, and mermaid's comb plumps contentedly. Shoulders lower, yours, theirs, even the boat's. Someone near the mast whistles before remembering the house rule, and the elder forgives it with a smile you can feel, because out here the roof is the sky, and the sky enjoys small tunes. You keep to the outer lee for a spell rather than diving straight for the pass, giving the reef space to talk and the wind room to forget its plans. One canoe's bailer finishes a story and a task at the same time. Another sheep gets a friendly correction. Only when all 3 hum the same pitch do you angle toward the cut, where the sea breathes more quietly. White along the reef becomes a lullaby, not a scold. You ride the shoulder in without showing off, simply keeping promises made at the stones and under the canoe house roof. Behind you, the squall keeps walking its own road, bored with how little panic you offered. Ahead, the breadfruit grove rustles a paper-soft welcome you have started to rely on. You touch Old Bridge, then Crocodile Smile, then the mast, and let your teeth buzz the hymn that never stopped, proof that even when the stars go shy, the conversation continues. Lanterns are covered. Voices put their indoor shoes back on. The 3 boats gather in the calm like thoughts returning to a single breath. And you sit a moment with rain still cooling your shoulders, thankful for small doors and clouds and for swells that remember the way home. Calm has the decency to arrive without speeches. The pass yawns you back into the lagoon with a sigh, and the boats idle toward the canoe house like cats returning from respectable mischief. Rain withdraws in polite veils. Steam rises from the breadfruit leaves as if the grove were brewing tea for everyone's bones. You feel the after tremble in your forearms and do the sensible thing taught by people who have outlived many gusts. You thank your knees, pat the mast, and find something useful to fix. Sails come first, because dignity likes to be mended before appetite. Mermaid's comb dries against the house posts, the crab claw stretched between pegs until the cloth remembers its shape. The younger navigator spreads a length of fiber across a scar where the squall nipped too hard. The patch material is soft but stubborn, plaited leaves pounded thin and rubbed with oil and ash until water promises to be confused by it. "We teach it to be 2 things," she says, "leaf and skin." She pricks holes with a bone awl, small and even, then threads a cord of twisted wow fiber through, your job being to keep a patient tension so the seam lies down without sulking. 4 pulls and a breath, 2 hitches and a hum, pinch, set. There. The lashing song returns, scaled for surgery. You trim away frayed hairs that look like a bad haircut, and try not to make fashion jokes at a time like this. The elder slides a wedge beneath Crocodile Smile, easing yesterday's strain mark until the grin is honest again. Old bridge gets an inspection you might wish on your own spine. Press here, listen there, oil the hushy places, retie Auntie Knot where she volunteered to be plain and perfect. The boy rubs each lashing with a mixture of coconut oil and powdered lime. The scent goes straight to the memory drawer labeled Storms That Forgot Our Name. Knots are retaught the way lullabies are, to everyone, even the people who already know them, because the night is generous but also fond of pop quizzes. Turtleback around the mast gets its rhythm reviewed. Moonshell at the beam's end spirals in patient increments until the last turn sits like a small galaxy. Auntie Knot leads the workshop, staunch and unphotogenic. Too much hero, the elder says, loosening a fancy hitch you tied without thinking. Save the flourish for the feast. You untie your ego, retie the line the way the house prefers, and the beam hums approval at a pitch your ribs can hear. By the time the patch lies flat and the knots pass their quizzes, hunger has remembered your name. The earth oven opens with that little theater you secretly love. Mats lifted like curtains, a first blush of steam that kisses everyone's cheek equally. The smell is exactly what the squall did not get to ruin. Breadfruit roasted until the edges caramelize into a flavor that tastes like waking up slowly. Fish steamed in leaf packets with a line of coconut cream as pale as moonlight. Taro thinking serious thoughts under hot stones. Hands move in that unhurried choreography of people who know how to feed storms out of their muscles. Someone salts, someone fans, someone jokes softly so nerves can find a chair. Breadfruit wedges pass palm to palm, and you juggle yours because they arrive hot enough to make manners sweat. The boy pretends not to notice, again, which is his kindest habit. You break the wedge open, steam exhaling a sweet starchy breath, and dip the inner crumb in coconut cream so thick that it keeps a slow promise all the way to your lips. Salt from the ocean still speaks on your skin. The cream answers, your jaw relaxes. Someone grates a lime over a leaf-wrapped fish. The rind sprays a bright sentence, and you discover that your tongue can hold many maps at once. Quiet jokes stitch the room back together. No one mocks the squall. They tease themselves instead. The sheet tender claims he almost named the gust Uncle, then remembered uncles require more barbecue. The lookout swears he saw your eyebrows reef themselves before the sail did, and offers to lash them to the mast next time. You are praised for steering with your ribs when your eyes were otherwise occupied pretending not to panic, and you accept the compliment like a shell set carefully in the right pan. Laughter here is not a weapon, it's needlework, closing the tiny places where worry made holes. After the first plates find their inner quiet, repair turns to teaching again, because the best time to learn a knot is when your shoulders believe in the world. The younger navigator gathers a circle around breadfruit table and draws a tilting rectangle in charcoal, the sail's leading edge, the patch, the direction of strain. She shows how the seam stitch must not simply be strong, it must be kind, angles spread so that no single thread grows old in a night. You take a turn with the needle and feel the truth of it. Pull too proud, the leaf pouts later, set with calm hands and the whole cloth breathes like a chest. Outside, the lagoon behaves as if the squall were a rumor. The breadfruit grove lifts and settles, paper soft, as if airing blankets. Children run errands in bowed armfuls of laughter. A grandmother checks the patch with a thumb and says a single approving syllable that would embarrass you if you weren't so relieved. The lazy market dog wanders in with the expression of management that has remembered it forgot something, and finding nothing to fix, lies down near the cool edge of a mat and pretends to supervise. Someone brings a small gourd cup with a sip of roasted fruit tea for each person who tied a knot or held a breath during the worst minute. It tastes like gratitude told in caramel. Your hands smell of oil and leaf and smoke. Your forearms carry a braid of ache that feels earned. The elder sits with his back to a post, eyes half closed, not napping, just letting the canoe house tell him what it needs next. He taps the deck near your knee. Balanced, he says, and you know he means more than lines and beams. As dusk slides its first soft hand toward the grove, you lift Mermaid's comb from the posts and feel the patch behave like a sentence that learned where to pause. The sail folds into itself without complaint, its new seam lying low like a good memory. You stow it blade up, respectful eyebrows, and stack paddles so their handles can chat. Around you, talk loosens into the kind of silence that isn't empty. Your teeth, unprompted, buzz their small helm hymn, and the tune sounds almost like the house's own breath. The feast doesn't end. It thins, like rain, becoming mist. People drift to duties that let sleep approach, rinsing bowls in a row of shiny moons, laying mats where feet won't insult thresholds, coiling lines in the direction they were born, so they dream without tangles. You help where guided, which is everywhere and nowhere, and in the doing you notice your nerves have been sewn up with leaf, rope, and slow food. You press your palm to old bredge one more time and feel a contented hum you choose to translate as "see you at dawn" or whenever the stars gossip again. The grove answers with its rustle. You promise not to rush to the next story, though you suspect, from the way a noddy calls toward the far motu, that another small problem is building itself out there with the patient ambition of a tide. For now, you lick a last gloss of coconut cream from your thumb, forgive the squall its hobby, and sit still enough that the canoe house's shadows tuck you in with the rest of the tools. Morning draws its neat line along the lagoon, and work resumes at the pace of breath. Mermaid's comb folded, anti-knot smug, old bridge padded like a cow that knows all the paths home. The younger navigator's apprentice, yes, the boy with the coil who hums the lashing song without noticing, takes a small outrigger to check basket traps strung between the motu. He leaves at the first notch of tide on the jetty post and should be back by the second. By the time water kisses the third notch, only his wake has come home. No panic, only arrangement. Worry is coiled like line, ready, not snarled. The elder listens to the reef the way you listen to the squall, chin tilted, kneecaps thinking. Wind from the east, cousin this morning, he says. Swell remembers the southeast. Outgoing tide pinches the pass. The younger navigator sketches the currents on sand with a driftwood twig, arrows that curve like the starfish knot, and draws a circle around the lane where an unwise pause would turn into drifting out. You feel the old arithmetic return to your ribs. Long swell, short rumor, cheek wind, knee truth. Two canoes again, light cloth, voices in their indoor shoes. You take the tiller of the second. Mermaid's comb shows only a modest angle, Crocodile smile intends to keep things polite. At the pass you toss a leaf and watch it decide. It does not dilly-dally. It commits to the channel between the motu, where tide runs a little greedy. The lookout points at a faint slick, foam stitched into a lane. Wind line, she murmurs. A pair of terns arrows low along it, commuting like clerks who know where gossip travels fastest. You follow not the birds exactly, but the logic that birds enjoy. Clues are small and do not wave flags. A length of pandanus fiber floats past, green dyed, today's color for trap bundles. His, the younger navigator says, and her mouth doesn't add any adjectives. Ahead, noddies change altitude, lowering as if peering into someone else's bowl. A booby wheels once, then again, not over a bait ball, but over a thought. The water shifts from pewter to something with a leaf memory, as if the lagoon were whispering that the apprentice's morning went wrong in the moment it forgot to be patient. Outside the farther motu, the sea remembers to be ocean. Swell lengthens, the wind cousin grows just opinionated enough to encourage mistakes. You keep the bow shouldering along the long underline, refusing to buy the short rumor. The lead canoe signals with a flat hand slicing low. Stories small, bows home. You answer with the tiniest helm breath and enjoy how even in worry the boat feels like a household. Anti-knot steady, moonshell confident, turtleback thoughtful. There, a stick stands at a funny angle ahead, not upright, not twirling, just stubborn. As you draw near, you see a paddle planted blade down like a sign, and a boy shin deep on an exposed bar that pretends to be a proper sandbank. He is humming the lashing song, 4 pulls and a breath, out loud now, because courage needs company. His little outrigger's ama has sulked free from a coral tooth. The outrigger Iako still leans, tied, but not doing its job. He has kept the hull crosswise to the long swell with the planted paddle and his own small will, but the tide is in a hurry and would like a different ending. No heroics, only procedure. The lead canoe falls to leeward of the bar. You mirror her on the other side to make a pocket where the apprentice can step without becoming a lesson. The younger navigator coils a line and sends a moonshell loop skating across the water. It slides over his wrist like a promise that likes handholds. He does not yank. He waits for the hulls to breathe together, then lets the rope do the polite work. You spill a whisper of sheet, so Mermaid's Comb stops thinking she is at the dance, and the boats settle into the small chore of retrieving family. When he reaches your platform, the boy remembers dignity in the right order. Hands on gunwale, knee, foot, then breath. No one hauls, no one scolds. The elder sets a palm on his head, a benediction the canoe house would approve. The younger navigator hands him water and a scrap of roasted breadfruit saved from breakfast on principle. Only when chewing happens does she glance at the broken lashing on the ama and lift a brow. Starfish knot did her part, she says softly, fingers inspecting the bite where coral argued. The reef wanted a story, that's all. You tow the small outrigger into the quieter water between the motu where Old Bridge can have a word with it. Repairs are the kind that prefer calm. A fresh length of sennet, a wedge tapped home, the starfish knot retied with the ash-dusted kindness you learned. The apprentice keeps his eyes on his hands and hums, 4 pulls and a breath, shaky at first, then steady as the line darkens with a sip of water and tightens into itself, plant returning to plant. What did you trust, the elder asks, not to prosecute, but to teach the next time? The wrong cousin, the boy admits, glancing at the wind and a cloud that dressed like an island. He says it the way you once said it. And 3 mouths smile because the club is generous. Birds settle back to their known errands, satisfied that humans resumed belonging. The tide, scolded by no one, decides to be slightly less ambitious for 20 minutes. You right the little outrigger with a synchronized heave, breath on the lift, hum on the set, and the hull rolls back into its story as gladly as a sleeper finding a familiar pillow. You touch Old Bridge and feel his hum answer. You let your teeth buzz their steerage hymn, and you file another map under the skin. Birds first, drift second, debris third, humility always. By late afternoon, the island's gossip calms, and the elder tilts his chin the way he does when a page is ready to turn. You feel it too, the sea roads smoothing in one direction, like palm leaves laid for a quiet procession. The apprentice has his coil back where it belongs. Mermaid's comb rests with a new scar that behaves like wisdom, and Auntie Knot sits at every corner as if she invented corners. You run a hand along Old Bridge, then breadfruit table, then crocodile smile, not as ritual, but as manners, and the crew answers with the small noises of leaving. Baskets clicked shut, gourds tested, a patch admired one last time as if it were shy. Departure is modest. No drums, no speeches, only hands on the gunwales and a last palmful of sweet water flicked toward the stones. The breadfruit grove gives that paper-soft rustle you now consider a benediction, and the canoe slides off her rollers as if returning to the place she was dreaming even while ashore. In the pass, the tide kisses the second notch and holds. You toss a leaf and watch it decide. It drifts toward the lane the elder traced this morning with his toe. "Homeward, cousin," he murmurs, and the sail answers with a patient belly. Outside the reef, the ocean settles into its long, generous handwriting. The southeast swell underlines the world. A lighter westerly punctuation taps at your ankles to see if you're paying attention. You keep the bow shouldered to the big line, not tempted by the small rumor. Above, star houses wake by degrees, reluctant and radiant. Your chosen friend will rise on the port shoulder later. For now, you borrow a patient pair in the east, a cook who never sleeps, and the shy one who loves a cloud's edge. You hold them where your ribs remember and your cheeks report a wind that has stopped giving advice and started keeping company. Sea roads announce themselves without letters. Slick lanes where the surface irons, low wind shadows, a thread of paler water laid over darker like a sash. Birds commute along them with the punctuality of cousins who adore schedules. Turns zip, naughties consider, a frigate bird writes a slow parenthesis above a patch you'll use tomorrow if you return this way again. Drift speaks the language of earlier, a weathered coconut with its beard combed flat, a ribbon of seagrass, a pumice pebble that claims a volcanic story none of you ask it to tell. You keep to the lane that smells faintly of leaf and cooled stone, the one that suggests a corridor in the moving house. Voices at sea wear indoor shoes. A hand gesture replaces a paragraph. The lashing song hums at the edge of hearing, ready to keep fingers honest if they're tempted by cleverness. The apprentice sits where crocodile smile can instruct him by osmosis, and repeats in a low voice the arithmetic you've grown fond of. Birds first, drift second, debris third, humility always. He grins when he gets to humility. He means it now, not as a clever line, but as rope that keeps the roof up. With the sun slipping back behind your shoulder, the water turns to hammered copper, then to a velvet that admits stars by name. Bioluminescence wakes in the bow wake, like a polite audience rising to clap with 2 fingers. Your paddle dips during a short spell and writes green fire cursive that vanishes as if shy. You steer with bones and let your eyes take breaks. The seam of sea and sky kills truer than any single spark. When tiredness visits, you put it to work. Count the breaths between swells, hum the lashing cadence, press your tongue to the roof of your mouth to mark a tiny adjustment. The elder's hand brushes your forearm. Yes, that. Then leaves you to keep talking with the tiller in that conversation that has stopped needing adjectives. Old markers appear like old neighbors. A cloud dome lifts and refuses to stroll. Beneath it, you imagine the outline of the island you left. Though you don't turn to check, you're not pining, only grateful. To starboard, far off, lightning flickers black and white behind a curtain the squall forgot to take down. You send it your regards and keep to the lane your knees prefer. A certain set to the swell tells of a reef you crossed on the way out. Remember, your teeth buzz? You do. You smile without moving your mouth. The canoe hums back, pleased with your body's small archive. Between watches, you trade places with the younger navigator so she can stretch her knees, and you can pretend to be a passenger for 6 heartbeats. She points at a dim bruise on the horizon and names a place you will not visit tonight, then draws a small map on your palm with her finger. Rise here, sink there, wind cousin with gossip, current with good manners. The map fades, but your skin keeps it. You give her back the tiller, not because you are clumsy, but because generosity is part of the boat's architecture. No one guards knowledge like a jealous cat here. Near midnight, the chosen star house rises to take its shift. You catch it with the corner of your eye, lift it to 2 palms above the rail, and feel the boat lengthen as if someone smoothed its hair. Mermaid's comb, patched and pleased, holds the breeze in that exact shape where effort stops being labor and becomes a pace your bones consider native. The lookout taps once where the cross swell tries to upstage, and you nod without looking, the way people nod when old friends arrive, and everyone already knows the conversation. Small promises begin to gather. You promise the apprentice that tomorrow you'll show him how to splice a loop that hides its own pride. He promises to teach you the market trick for keeping limes from sulking. The elder promises the boat an extra rub of oil. You promise the house to practice silence where thresholds ask. None are written, all are binding in the way dew is binding to the morning. Soft, inevitable, light-catching. Above, stars cross their doors. Below, plankton stars answer. Between them, your little household keeps its breath even and long. Toward dawn, the wind shifts just enough to smell like something you missed without naming it. A particular green, a bakery of leaves, a dog who knows you, a canoe house that creaks like a good joke remembered. Your ribs tighten with recognition before your eyes can swear. Birds agree, then announce, then escort. The turns first, the naughty second, the booby arriving in the role of official. You don't rush the angle. You let the lane bring you, grateful for corridors that return you after they teach you to leave. When the horizon stops being a line and becomes a suggestion of trees, the elder sets a hand on old bridge and breathes once. No one cheers. Cheering is for when you forget how to be quiet. The pass clears its throat in white and invites you through. You touch crocodile smile, then the mast, and your teeth hum the small hymn without your permission. Sea roads fold behind you like woven mats rolled for another night. Ahead, the lagoon prepares its mirror, and the breadfruit leaves practice their applause. Stories and small promises settle on your shoulders like dew, light enough to ignore, bright enough to keep. You ride the last swell in, holding your star house on one shoulder and the faint smell of warm wood on the other, and the canoe agrees to the final patient turn that means home. Evening drifts over the lagoon like a shawl someone lays across your shoulders, the kind that smells faintly of smoke and green and a little salt. From the canoe house, voices put on soft shoes, and lanterns rise one by one, small moons cupped in hands, set aboard canoes that know the quiet lanes by heart. Wicks catch, glass breathes, and a dozen slow fires begin to move, each reflection joining the water's handwriting, until the lagoon reads like a book you can only open at night. Your crew readies the platform as if for a last gentle errand. Old bridge is stroked in thanks, breadfruit table gets a respectful knock, crocodile smile shows its friendly teeth and accepts a new wedge, just because good manners like rehearsal. Auntie Knot sits at the corners pretending not to be proud. Mermaid's comb stays folded. Tonight is not a night for sailing far, only for floating among neighbors until goodbyes have become stories, not stings. Lantern canoes gather in a crescent just beyond the jetty tide notch, each boat keeping a paddle's width of peace. The younger navigator stands with knees supple and hands low on the tiller, and you stand beside her, palm on the mast, teeth humming the faint helm hymn you now do without thinking. The apprentice kneels by Crocodile Smile and ties a very plain, very beautiful auntie knot around the handle of a small gourd cup, his way of saying he has learned that flourish is for feasts, not for roofs. People pass gifts the way currents pass along warmth. A woman leans over and offers a crescent of roasted breadfruit wrapped in a leaf, the steam sneaking up at you like a shy compliment. A child extends a string of tiny shells that look like punctuation. You accept them as if they might help your sentences calm down on sleepless nights. The balance scale woman from the jetty holds up a shell and tips it sideways. Payment accepted in stories, as usual. And you give your last one for the day. The squall that behaved like a teacher who shuts the window but leaves the door open. The star that returned to its mark like a cousin finally remembering the time. the boy who planted his paddle and sang the lashing song until help sounded like hands. Chant floats across the water but refuses to be loud. A deep voice names the sea roads you used. A lighter one thanks the house cloud that remembered to be pretty even when it forgot rain. A child, coached by a grandmother's elbow, lists the boat parts with nicknames, and when he says crocodile smile, every canoe shows a little tooth. The lazy market dog, who has attended exactly none of the voyages, lies on the jetty with the expression of someone in charge of sunsets and seems satisfied with the lantern choreography. The elder moves from boat to boat without stirring much water, blessing what should be blessed. The patch on mermaid's comb that lies low as a good memory, the apprentice's coil that has finally remembered clockwise from sulking, your wrists, which have learned to pull and to let go without making a speech. When he reaches you, he presses a length of sennet into your palm, soft, resin-scented, oiled with the patience of many hands. So your pockets remember even when your eyes forget, he says, which is how this place signs books. You pass beneath the breadfruit grove, where the lanterns paint the leaves to look like they're whispering with their own light. The grove answers with that paper-soft applause that first told you were doing fine without needing to be special. A woman leans over and fans you with a palm, and you do not need cooling, but you accept the choreography. You have learned that sometimes the dance is the message. Along the shore, the canoe house stands like a dark triangle of stored voices. It creaks once, the exact syllable grandmothers use when approving without starting a debate. At the sacred stones, the canoes pause nose to nose, as if the platform were a friend on a doorstep. A shell taps each stone, a sound like rain deciding to be polite, and a garland is unknotted and laid at the base. The apprentice places a small repaired lashing beside a feather, both of them remembering to be humble. You add a twist of your sennet to the pile, and the elder traces a thin arc of powdered coral between two stones. Your road out and your road back, sketched so lightly that only people who have already traveled it can see the white. The goodbyes don't begin so much as they relax into being. The market opens for a last tiny transaction. A bowl of coconut water passed hand to hand to hand. A cone of grated coconut pressed into your palm with nothing said. A joke about eyebrows that reef faster than sails, now a fond exaggeration, not a diagnosis. The apprentice lifts your wrist and ties on a narrow braid made of his practice. 3 strands, then 3 of those, and you offer him the tiniest paddle charm the carver once let you hold. He accepts it with a nod that says, "Your future patience has been invoiced and paid." Boats drift apart by the width of one polite thought. Lanterns dim, not all at once, but one, then another, then 2 that decide to sleep at the same time, because long friendships can coordinate without speaking. Voices fall below the level where words need to know their words. The lagoon takes a breath and holds it. Plankton stars wake in the wakes like children allowed to stay up late if they promise to be quiet. You set your paddle across your knees and let your spine steer, because tonight there is nowhere to reach but deeper into here. The elder gestures, palm low, and the flotilla melds into a wide, turning ring. No choreography beyond courtesy, no song beyond the lashing hum more felt than heard. You think of the story bench, the balance pans, the house cloud, the night that asked you to keep steering with bones while your eyes auditioned for panic and lost the part. You allow yourself a smile small enough to be mistaken for a moon ripple. When the ring unwinds, the first canoe noses home, a lantern winks, then vanishes behind the canoe house like a promise saved for morning. Your boat lingers, then follows, then rests in the shallow where sand remembers to be floor. Hands arrive the way tide does, exactly enough of them, never late, without speeches. You step ashore, and the ground takes your weight the way a friend takes your secret. And the breadfruit leaves rustle as if the trees were turning down their pages for sleep. The elder lays a palm against old bridge, then against your shoulder. Same weight, same message. He does not say goodbye. He says later, which is here's what our doors are for. You lie down on a mat where your feet won't insult any thresholds, and your last sight before closing your eyes is a single lantern in a window near the canoe house. A small, patient moon that will stay awake long enough to carry any straggling thoughts down to the shore and set them adrift. Your teeth hum the helm hymn once more, softer than breath, and your ribs, learning, continue the conversation without you. Let the canoes keep their lanterns small and steady, and let the lagoon unspool each glow into a long, slow ribbon that drifts wherever the night decides is kind, while your breath widens and lengthens and learns the easy lesson of the water that never argues as it turns and rests and turns again. And as the breadfruit leaves rub their soft paper voices together, you begin to hear the shore speak in a low, even cadence that tells you you've done enough for one day, and that the stars will keep track of the doors without needing your eyes to stay open, and you can simply let your hands remember the weight of the paddle, the curve of the mast, the warmth of a gourd cup passed from friend to friend. Here, the canoe house becomes only a shape against the sky and a good promise inside the wood, and the sacred stones grow comfortable and quiet and keep their maps folded the way old letters are kept in a drawer, and the elder's kindness settles over your shoulders like that shawl of salt and green and warm rope. And whatever little gusts tried to convince you they were storms can be set gently on the water now to float out of the pass and fade where the long, generous handwriting of the swell makes every sudden thought slow down and practice being a sentence that takes its time. And if your mind pulls up the squall just once more, let it soften into the hush after rain, the way the patch on Mermaid's comb lies so calm you forget where the seam begins. And if your knees twitch with the memory of keeping balance, let them be rocked by the thought of birds commuting home along sea roads, and shelves of shells evening the pans on a quiet balance, and the lashing song reduced to a breath, 4 poles and a hum, 2 hitches, and a word you can't quite hear, because sleep has already taken the work from you and promised to finish it neatly. And now, with the lantern a tiny, patient moon, and the breadfruit grove closing its book, you are carried out past the last whisper into a night that knows your name and keeps it safe until morning. End of story. Sweet dreams.